Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating narrative from the Quran. It's a story that perfectly bridges the gap between ancient history, incredible engineering marvels, and, honestly, timeless principles of leadership. We're looking at the historical account of a leader tasked with an immense challenge, protecting a deeply vulnerable population from a literally terrifying threat. It's one of those narratives that forces us to look at the very nature of authority and responsibility. So let's jump right in and unravel the story of Dhul-Qarnayn and the Iron Wall.
Okay, let's dive into this. In human history, we usually see that absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? But what if absolute power meets absolute justice? The source text we're analyzing today presents a radically different scenario. It introduces us to a uniquely righteous ruler who possessed unchecked authority. But, and here's the kicker, he chose to wield it not for personal gain or conquest, but as an instrument of pure justice. This question is the exact lens through which we need to view everything that follows.
So part 1, Dhul-Qarnayn, a just ruler, a kingdom of vast resources and fairness. The narrative, which is detailed in Surah Al-Kahf, introduces us to a sovereign granted an unimaginably vast kingdom by God. We are talking about unparalleled resources here, absolute power, which he proactively used to travel the earth and establish justice among diverse peoples. He was a doer, bringing order to chaos wherever he went.
That brings us to part 2, the threat of Gog and Magog, and a desperate plea for protection. During one of these expansive journeys, Dhul-Qarnayn's mission of justice brought him face to face with a severe existential crisis. He encountered a population that was terrified, totally vulnerable, and living under the constant shadow of a violent threat. They were being actively terrorized by groups identified in the text as yajoog and Majoog, or, as they're commonly known in English, Gog and Magog. Now, this wasn't just some border dispute. This was a socio-political nightmare for these locals. They were facing total, systemic disruption and violence.
The source text actually gives us the exact, dramatic plea from these desperate locals. They approached this great king and pleaded, "Yajoog and Majoog are spreading corruption in our land. Can you build a strong wall between us?" Notice that word, corruption. The original text really emphasizes that these invaders weren't just stealing stuff. They were destroying the very fabric of the society, literally ruining the land itself. The people were begging for a physical barrier just to save their lives and their livelihoods.
Now notice the stark contrast in the transaction that follows. The terrified locals offered to pool their wealth and pay Dhul-Qarnayn handsomely to build this wall, but he flat out refused their money. He stated clearly that the power and provisions God had already given him were more than enough. He didn't want their taxes, he wanted their sweat. He demanded physical labor and communal effort. He mobilized the very people who were being victimized to work alongside him. And honestly, this is a masterclass in ethical leadership. He empowered a terrified community by making them active participants in their own salvation, rather than just treating them as helpless victims or a source of profit.
Which brings us to Section 3, Building the Impenetrable Wall. Ancient engineering brilliance. What follows isn't just a tale of magic, but a highly tangible, massive engineering project. Dhul-Qarnayn didn't just stack some stones, he conceptualized and executed a brilliant structural marvel to permanently solve the crisis.
Let's walk through exactly how the text describes this construction, because it's pretty wild. First, he instructed the people to gather massive blocks of iron, just heavy, raw industrial materials. They stacked these huge iron blocks to completely fill the gap between two mountain cliffs. Step 2, he ordered them to blow on it, lighting a massive, intense fire right between and around these iron blocks, until the iron itself was glowing red hot. And then, step 3, this is the real stroke of engineering genius. He had them pour molten copper all over the superheated iron structure. The molten copper seeped into all the cracks and fused with the iron, creating this incredible, unified metallic alloy.
So the absolutely crucial point here is the result of this unprecedented effort. As the text explicitly states, the resulting barrier was so impossibly smooth that Yajoog and Majoog simply could not scale it or climb over it, and it was so incredibly dense and hard that they couldn't pierce or break through it. This structural ingenuity completely neutralized the threat. The invaders were successfully contained, and peace was finally restored to a region that had really only known terror.
Now, at this point, most kings or emperors would throw a huge parade for themselves. But as we see in Section 4, Divine Mercy and Final Promise, Humility in the Face of Great Success, Dhul-Qarnayn's reaction completely shifts the narrative from a massive physical accomplishment to profound spiritual humility.
And this brilliantly illustrates the mindset of a truly just ruler. Looking at this monumental, impenetrable wall, his immediate response was, "This is the mercy of my Lord, and when the promise of my Lord comes, he will level it to the ground." He completely bypassed his own ego. He credited God entirely for this worldly success, acknowledging that even the strongest fortress ever built by human hands is, at the end of the day, temporary and subject to divine will.
That statement wasn't just humility, though. It was actually a prophecy. According to the Quranic text, this incredible metallic structure will remain intact, holding back the corruption until the end of times. A major sign of the approaching day of judgment is that, at a specific time appointed by God, that divine promise will come to pass. The wall is destined to finally crumble, and Yajoog and Majoog will break out once again. It's a powerful reminder within the text that all earthly security is ultimately finite.
As we wrap up this explainer, we arrive at part 5, important lessons for today, timeless takeaways on leadership. You might be wondering, why does this ancient narrative matter right now? Well, we aren't exactly building walls out of molten copper these days, but the source text provides incredibly sharp, timeless insights into modern ideals of public service, governance, and the psychology of power.
The text lays out 4 crucial moral takeaways that we can easily distill from this story. First, power is never a license for exploitation. It's a mandate to protect the vulnerable. Second, whatever success we achieve, no matter how monumental, is a divine gift. Arrogance just has no place in leadership. Third, the spiritual reality that God's promises, including the end of all things, are always true, which grounds our worldly achievements in a much broader eternal perspective. And finally, that a truly righteous ruler prioritizes justice and active public service above everything else. Think about it. Dhul-Qarnayn had the power to conquer the world, but he used it to do the hard, gritty work of helping a remote community build a wall. So, I want to leave you with this final thought to consider. Look around at the leadership in our modern world, whether that's in our communities, our corporations, or our governments. How can modern leaders actively apply Dhul-Qarnayn's standard? What would it actually look like today to truly prioritize the protection of the vulnerable and to value communal effort and ethical service over taking a financial profit? It's a standard set by an ancient text, but I'd argue it's a challenge that is just as relevant right now as it has ever been.